Good evening and welcome to the December 4th meeting of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A few housekeeping items. First, Vice Chair Gualiumi is excused from tonight's meeting. Board Member Naomi Schoenfeld is excused from tonight's meeting. Student Representative Johanna Karoma is excused from tonight's meeting. And on the phone we have Brandy Nunez, who is joining us telephonically. Brandy, I'm going to go through a couple of questions that we need to cover, and then we'll be able to run through the agenda. If any votes do happen tonight, they will happen by roll call. They will happen by roll call vote by state law. So, Board Member Brandy Nunez, the meeting proceedings will follow RSA 91-A:2, which states that all parties must contemporaneously be able to hear and speak to each other. The meeting should be audible to the public. All persons present must be identified, and all votes must be taken by roll call. So, Board Member Nunez, why is your attendance not reasonably practical?
I am sick with pneumonia.
Thank you for staying home. Where are you located?
I'm in my room.
And are you in the presence of anyone?
No, I am not.
Thank you, Brandy. Just call to our attention if you have something that you'd like to ask or participate, comments, questions. And from there, if there's a vote, again, we'll call on you via roll call. So thank you for your patience on that. And we will go on to item number 2, which is public participation. Anyone from the public that would like to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will close public participation. We'll go on to item number 3, which is legislative update. We put the item as elected representatives, but we wanted to thank Rosemarie Rung for coming out tonight. And she is one of our 8 state legislators, but reached out to us about all the possible bills that will be coming before us from the House and the Senate that could impact our school district operations. So welcome and thank you so much for reaching out and coming.
Thank you very much, Chairman Barnes. And Mrs. Nunez, I really hope you feel better soon. You don't sound too good. So I'm sorry you're ill tonight. I sent all of you by email a list of over 760 bills. They're actually were called LSRs. Did you receive it? It was an Excel spreadsheet. LSRs stand for Legislative Service Requests. And at the beginning, as the House and Senate are beginning to prepare for the second year of the session, or the first year of the session, we submit titles to bills that we want to see drafted. And that's called a legislative service request. And the Office of Legislative Services works with the sponsor of those bills to help draft language. And the sponsor and co-sponsor sign off on that language. There may be some editing that goes back and forth. But once it gets drafted and the Speaker of the House calls a reading, it gets assigned to a committee, it becomes a bill essentially at that point. So think of the LSRs as sort of just the beginning of a bill. It's essentially just the title. Some LSRs get filed and never get signed off. The list I sent you already accounted for that, although there were 2 Senate bills, I believe, that have been dropped from that. So the next draft you get of that Excel spreadsheet will have those 2 removed. When I sent that to you, I took a stab at trying to identify those LSRs which would be of particular interest to the school district, also of particular interest to the town and to the Merrimack Village District. And what I want to do this year is, because now I'm in my second year, so I've kind of got some of the water dried behind my ears, is to establish a process to ensure that we have really good communication and that I'm serving the needs of the school district adequately. I remember, I think, Shannon, a few months ago, there was a bill that I voted on regarding, and I noticed it was on the agenda regarding surveys. And it kind of went against the sentiments of the school board. And so I want to make sure I have a process so I can capture that early. I want to make sure that I'm an effective representative of the school district and all the constituents in Merrimack. So what I've done is I put together a list. I'm sorry, Mrs. Nunez, that you can't see it. I don't have it electronically with me to send off to you. But I put together a list. It's just a draft of some steps we can take to ensure that we're flagging what priorities the school district wants me and other representatives to address. So the first one is to submit the spreadsheet of LSRs, which I've done. The next one is I'd be looking to the school board to flag those and let me know which ones are of particular interest. That doesn't have to be set in stone, but it just kind of narrows it when we're talking nearly 780 bills that are going to be filed. And then what I'll do is update the spreadsheet with those flagged bills, and then communicate with the town council about bills of mutual interest. I know there are a few that have to do with capital reserve funds and voting and warrant articles, so there definitely would be some mutual interest there. And then once the bills, in January, the bills will be available to view in a PDF form on the New Hampshire General Court website. I can insert those links into that spreadsheet. So you'd have the opportunity to go through and review them. And, you know, because sometimes the title doesn't totally reflect the intent of the bill. So review those bills, the language. I can return to the school board where we can talk about what bills were selected and targeted as a priority. And then I'd be looking to for your recommendations, if there's any amendments you'd like to see to a bill, and the types of support or opposition. And let me explain what that means. And what I also did is, even though it says draft, it's not a draft. I attached what's called a primer on legislative process. This is taken from the New Hampshire General Court website. But in a nutshell, once the bills become available, they get assigned to a committee that's more aligned to the intent of the bill. So most of the bills that you would be interested in will be assigned to the Education Committee. There might be some that are assigned to the Election Committee, but more than likely it's going to be the Education Committee. The first step of after that the committee gets that bill is they schedule a public hearing where lobbyists, the public, subject matter experts come and testify in favor and opposition to the bill, or maybe they're just there to give some factual background about the bill. So when the public hearing begins, there's a clipboard near the entrance of the hearing room, and anyone can go in and sign in their name, what position they hold, or their address, and if they're in support or opposition to the bill. So that's really the minimum level of expressing support or opposition. The next level would be writing a letter to the committee, giving phone calls to committee members to express what your opinion, what the opinion is. And then the other level would be to actually speak at the public hearing. So I've done all three. I think for a bill, particularly a bill where it's very important for it to pass or not to pass, speaking at the public hearing can be very effective. So being able to schedule that in and reach out to my fellow representatives from Merrimack, and also even representatives from other communities who may sit on that education committee, kind of do some informal influencing of those committee members can be effective. And then I would be updating the spreadsheet with what our strategy is going to be regarding if we're going to have face-to-face testimony or if it's going to be written support, whatever. But I want to use that Excel spreadsheet as the mothership of information and keep that updated and alive. And once we implement it, also coordinate with Senator Shannon Chanley. Because if it's a House bill, it's going to go through the process of public hearing, vote by that committee, and then a full House vote. And then it goes to the Senate, where the process is repeated. It gets assigned to a Senate committee, that committee votes, and then it goes to the full Senate for a vote. If the bill that was approved at the House differs from that from the Senate through amendment, there's a conference committee that's called, and they find a compromise, a consensus of the bill, and both sides vote again on that, and then it goes to the governor. So being able to keep Senator Chanley in the loop is going to be really important, because the House is only half the process. And then update it with legislative action and votes, and also coordinate with the New Hampshire School Boards Association to make sure that we're not redundant in our advocacy. And there may be opportunities where Merrimack's voice needs to be heard than just an association's voice. And then just to wrap up the session year, which would likely be in June, by asking you what your goals are for the following year, legislative goals. Now, we will start a new general court that following year, because we are on a biennium. So if it's not me representing Merrimack, I'm sure the reps that are elected would want to know what the school board wants them to prioritize for that biennium that would begin in 2020. So this is just sort of my draft. I'm looking for feedback from the school board if that seems workable. The crossover day where the bills swap is, I don't know when that's going to be. It really depends on how the calendar falls out. But it's probably going to be around the beginning of March. So that's the day where there's kind of just this, it'll be hairy to get bills out of the House committees by then. And I don't know, do you have any questions?
Well, I'll just kind of let you know what I did.
Okay.
So I ended up taking your spreadsheet.
Oh, you printed it. See,
I
I was
printed
going to
it.
do that, but I wanted to save trees.
I understand, but it was all about trying to take out the noise of it, which obviously you were thorough, and I appreciate that. And then there were a couple, I'm glad you were thorough, because I think there were a couple that you didn't have highlighted that I think
Okay.
are relevant to
Good.
us. Things like, and a definition of reasonably described under right to know. We deal with right to know requests all the time. Cost of production of records under right to know, we deal with that as well. The calculation of state retirement system annuities, our teachers. So obviously we're very affected by all of those things. So even if it's not about daily operations, there were definitely some that were impacting us. So I just basically, they were unhighlighted, but I kept them as relevant lines. So what I'll do is I'll create a tab on your master spreadsheet of, what we think is
Okay.
relevant to us, and just call it school district, and return that back to you. And with what we call kind of our edits about things that your advocacy would impact our operations.
Yes.
And if I missed anything that, in that, I'm sure between all of us we'll make sure, but just something thorough. But honestly, for us, this is a great start as far as having a process.
Okay.
I've been on the board a few years, and this is the first time we've really had this kind of engagement from our elected representation, and we really do appreciate that.
Okay. And that's exactly the feedback I'm looking for, is what bills do I have to pay attention to? It's impossible for me to follow every single bill that comes through.
Definitely.
And it's kind of scary, because if a constituent doesn't bring it to my attention, I just don't follow it. It's impossible. So that's the type of feedback I'm looking for. I'm also going to meet with Dr. McLaughlin a week from Monday, and we'll be going into more detail about this. I don't know if I'll have language of some of the bills. I can probably get them from the sponsors, but I do want to be more proactive this year. Last year it was really tough getting started. I think once we took our oath of office, the LSR deadline was just like 2 or 3 days away. And so it was sort of, really a harried experience where I didn't have the luxury of time to go to the school board to ask for your input.
So this
Okay.
is definitely what we've been needing for a long time.
Okay.
So And I think that, the collaboration, I know that, we've had Wendy Thomas here, Kathy Stack, Nancy Murphy, all really, especially when the Medicaid reimbursement situation
yes.
came up. And that's when we realized that we definitely have people that are supportive of advocating on our behalf. And Senator Chanley, of course, joined as well. And that was, we hadn't seen our state senator in, probably 6-7 years at a
Okay.
board meeting. So this has been a fantastic turn of events. And sometimes it takes those difficult situations to realize what we all can do to work together. So this has been, this has been a good cycle for us.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'll look forward to that updated spreadsheet, and then Dr. McLaughlin will meet a week from Monday. And if there's anything in this process you see needs to be changed, let me know. But this is pretty much outlining how I'm going to approach it.
Okay.
Because I'll also be coordinating with the town council and Merrimack Village District.
Perfect.
Okay.
And thank you for taking the lead on that. We, as the one thing I just want to preface is you took the initiative, but all representatives who serve Merrimack are always welcome to come to our table. And we're definitely looking to hear from all of you, because you have 8 votes in Concord.
Absolutely,
that's
absolutely. And
important.
that's, I mentioned how important it is to bring them in when we understand how we're going to, what position we need to represent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Thank you.
So I just wanted to echo what Chair Barnes said. I'm really grateful, and I'm new in this role too, and it's one of the themes of for me in the last couple of months has been that the job that we do to educate our students is really big, and it's bigger than one superintendent or one school board. It really does require the active participation of as many people as want to get involved and be helpful, and this is exactly in that spirit. And so the things that happen in Concord really do impact us, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a voice to share what those real life impacts are. Sometimes they are the consequences are not known, and or the extent of the consequences aren't known on the impacts, and it's nice to have an opportunity to talk about what it's like to implement things and what it's like on the user end of that. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to share that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. And we are on to item number 4, which is the request to conduct research, and we invite to the table Mary Quigley. Thank you and welcome. Is your light on? Just at
Oh, there we go.
there you go.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come here, all of you school board members, Dr. McLaughlin, and I'm just here tonight to talk to you about a research project. I'm a music educator and also currently a master's degree student, and I'm studying music education at an online university, Liberty University, which is located in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I'm at the end of my degree. For my thesis project, I'm studying the value of assessment in inclusive general music classroom. So in this project, I hope to determine if assessment is being used consistently or at all in the general music classroom. And I've chosen this project because I have a strong interest in the relationship between inclusion in the classroom and assessment techniques, specifically in general music. There are many studies concerning inclusion with students who have special needs, and there are also studies about assessment. However, there are very few studies that connect assessment techniques and inclusion and demonstrate that music teachers are teaching the students according to their abilities. So in order to determine the value of assessment techniques, I will be conducting online teacher surveys amongst the music teachers of the school district. And I will also be choosing a classroom from one of those teachers to observe. This will be based on survey responses as well as the willingness of the participants. And I believe that Merrimack is an ideal district for my research project. First of all, I grew up here, and I really appreciated the education that I received. And I was also inspired by the music teachers in this district to go on and continue my education as a music educator. So I definitely would like to be able to conduct my research here because of the familiarity I have with this community and because I believe that it is a great school district. And I also would like to just see, you know, how is it the same or different from when I was growing up? Have things changed? Have they improved? Liberty University is very rigorous in their research approval process. So currently, right now, they are still reviewing my project, and I will be hopefully approved soon by their own internal review board. You hopefully have received copies of the various consent forms and recruitment letters that I would be sending out to the schools. And if you would like to read my proposal, I would also be happy to send it to you by email. And I can definitely collect your email at the end of this meeting or via the superintendent. And that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Andy?
So this is, excuse me, almost as bad as Brandy, except I'm not contagious anymore, I think. So the question is actually for the table. For this sort of a survey, is it opt-in or opt-out? I always get confused, so I always ask every time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we talked about that, so I'll ask Mary
Yes.
to respond.
That's a good question. I had only considered opt-out for parents for their children to participate, but that I believe would be an opt-in. I don't know how many general music teachers you have, but I'm assuming if it is based on fewer numbers, it would be an opt-in.
So does that mean instead of these opt-out forms, there'll be opt-in forms instead for the students?
Yes.
Okay, so it's different than we're seeing here.
Right.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I'm not hearing Brandy having any questions at this point. So I don't know if she barely has a voice, but
She could do Morse code or something.
yes. So I'm going.
No, I have no questions.
Okay, good. I didn't want to make you struggle. I'm so sorry. I was trying to kind of speak for you if you had no questions. It sounds like it's a real struggle. So with that, as long as the district feels that it's a positive, and it does, or else you wouldn't be here, there are no questions of the board, we would put this on our consent agenda for our next meeting. So basically,
Okay.
in 2 weeks, we will vote on it, and it will just go forward. So if anything comes up in the meantime, and we do want to ask some more questions, we would take it off consent, make it a regular agenda item again, and that wouldn't prohibit us from then voting that night as well. So, but if there's more questions, we may just put it on a regular agenda item and just, but if no questions come up, then it would just be a simple vote and we wouldn't need you to participate.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. So good luck on your research, good luck on your thesis, and you know, music educators definitely are the highlight of a student's day, and so we thank you for the work that you're committing to doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. We are on to item number 5, which is the review of the New Hampshire Statewide Assessment System, NHSAS, results with John.
So I am attempting to use some technology again tonight, so please bear with me. wasn't responding. Thank you very much. So thank you for the opportunity tonight to talk about our state assessment scores from 2018-19. And now it just went blank. There we go. We're back up. So a little overview about student achievement as defined by our Department of Education around student achievement. Academic achievement in New Hampshire is measured by examining both student performance, how well they did, and student participation on our state assessments. The student performance measurement, the percentage of proficiency in 3 subject areas. We have math, English language arts, and science. Student achievement levels for state assessment are also evaluated and divided into 4 categories. Proficiency levels 1 and 2 are those that are non-proficient. 3 and 4 are being proficient. So basically that means that students, it's above a mark. So we have measured this, and it's a typical 4-point scale. And each year we look at students that really achieve above that mark or below. And we also are achieved by the students who participate in our assessment, and they look for 100% participation. And those that don't, we are still held accountable for in the state of New Hampshire. A little history of where we've been with assessments in New Hampshire. Over the past 10 years, we've had 4 different assessments. And there's been significant shifts in the construction and the implementation of this going on, too. So we have gone from 4 very different assessments as it's gone along in our time. That's been very difficult for us to identify some patterns that are in place. It's hard to look at cohorts. It's hard to look at how kids have achieved over a period of time because we've switched the assessment. And we've also changed the format of this assessment. It used to be from a paper pencil test to now an online assessment. And that's changed over the years also. And that's important because when you look at some of the data, it's hard to draw the conclusions we would hope to right now, more than what it is and how we achieved in the 18-19 school year. So let's look at some of our data. In ELA, so English Language Arts, we had 57% of our kids proficient and our students proficient, and the state average was 56%. So we're a little above, which is good. In math, 54%, and the state average was 48%. And then in science was one of our lower scores at 34%, and the state being at 39. So that's currently where we are. I'm going to break it down a little more for the board and for those at home. So level 1 on our English Language Arts, we had 19, level 2, 23, level 3, 38, which is one of our strongest performances, and level 4, 19. So what does that mean? From a visual, it means in the green area is our 3 and 4, which is a little bit larger than our area of 1 and 2. And that's where you would hope to be right now. Now in mathematics, we had level 1, 18%, level 2, 27, level 3, 33, and level 4, we had 22. Into categories together, we had in the blue part, that's our proficient 3 and 4 levels, we had 55%. And in our orange part, it's 1 and 2, that's below proficiency, that's 45%. We look at our science. And again, these are scores from the 18-19 assessment. Level 1, as you can see, significant at 44%. Level 2 at 20%. Level 3 at 27%, and then level 4 you'll see at 0. So this is a slide, if you look at, we would certainly hope that that purple area of 3 and 4 will grow. That's currently at 27% based on this assessment. In 1 and 2, that has a very good piece of the pie at 64%. Right now is our below proficient in science. So what's this data tell us? And what's in place right now? So what's in place is we have a revised math curriculum, which we are in our second year of implementation with a new curriculum in math programming. We have a revised science curriculum that we have also just begun that we continue to look at and revise. Implementation of our social emotional curriculum at grade levels pre-K through 5th grade right now, and doing some piloting in 6 and 7. We have our UDL network that we've begun with our 6 teams, 7 teams working forward right now as part of the UDL network to learn more about universal design in our classrooms. We have our EPEC model in place to look and grow educators. And we have a systematic review of all our internal data. We continue to look at our data, especially with our language arts coordinators, and we continue to look at where our students are and where they are compared to students in their own growth. What's in process now as we continue this year? We are in process of our standards-based report card, K-6, that will help us really align to standards. We have ongoing math training coming up in January, where we'll be training all of our educators in our interventions and also our newer teachers in the Envisions program. We continue to look at the next generation standards for science, and we will have the science committee come before the board and talk about what are some of those revisions we're looking to do with our current science curriculum. Cognitive coaching we have just completed for all of our supervisors, and we are in process of doing 6 more sessions when it comes to that. Continuous training for our staff through our language arts coordinators. They have been doing it since the start of the year, looking at both reading and writing. Continue to learn more about our universal design for the rest of our staff that aren't part of our cohort. We have to continue that. And then what's to come, hopefully. Revision and alignment of all the language arts curriculum. You'll hear more about that coming up this spring, about opening up and looking at our language arts curriculum. Revision and the alignment of standards and competencies, pre-K through 12. We've begun some of this work at our middle school and high school, and we'll continue to look at our competencies. And then alignment of interventions into a multi-tiered system. It's an area that Heather Barker and I have been talking a lot about, and some of the transition to my new position about, are we aligned with our interventions as much as we are with our curriculums currently? And we are going to continue to look at that for years to come. Is there any questions I can answer at this time?
Andy?
So that last slide has got an interesting title. It says, what does the data tell us? You didn't really answer the question what the data tells you, because as you said up front, it's hard to draw correlation based on the 4 different methodologies. What you've really laid out is essentially what you're going to be doing over the coming time. One of the things, I'm feeling good about the math because we've seen a lot about that. We understand the progress. So looking at how that progresses over multiple years will be good to see. Science concerns me, especially given so many at the level 1, and you've gone through and talked about the science curriculum. So I guess what I'd be looking for is, as we go into the coming year, more proactive. And it's not even teaching to the test or anything silly like that, but more or less, how are we missing the mark so much in that compared to the other areas? So for me, that's the thing I'm going to be looking for.
Mark?
So I agree. So John alluded at the beginning to the fact that it's kind of hard to talk in terms of patterns when there have been 4 assessments in 10 years, and each assessment has been qualitatively different than the other one. So each one has, had its own orientations, its own emphases, and so on and so forth. But the thing that has been consistent, generally speaking, in the performance of students in Merrimack and statewide is some version of higher ordered thinking. So in science, we call that inquiry. In ELA, we call that analysis. In math, you call that analysis too. So even though the kind of the particular questions or the thrust of the questions has been different and it's somewhat apples to oranges, there is a thread, and that is that we've got to continue to educate our educators and therefore our students to as to what higher order inquiry-based thinking really means, because more and more that's what the college and career ready assessments really are asking students to do, not just be able to answer whether 2 + 2 is 4, but and so that much we do know. And our new science curriculum is an inquiry-based science curriculum, and I think it's second year of full implementation. That's what the data, that's really, in a way, that is what the data tells us. And the thing that we need to be about is making sure that we don't, and that's part of what UDL is really helping us to do, is to not teach in isolation. So if inquiry and higher ordered thinking and analysis in the contents are the things that our students are increasingly asked to demonstrate, then we can't teach in silos. We have to teach that every time we teach a content. So what we're trying to get our teachers to increasingly understand is when you're teaching a lesson on a short story and you're asking, what did the author think? That's a different way of saying, what does the data tell you in the science experiment, and then speak about that. So trying to have teachers blend their experiences, their teaching experiences, that is a very different, not an excuse, just an explanation. That is a very different way than teachers primarily of us, let's say had been trained. So it's not like we don't know so much. The task now is to continue to drill down and to continue to create these opportunities through universal design for learning and the kinds of training that John was talking about, the math training, and in the other areas, to really get teachers to internalize what it means to teach that way, and then to get students and parents to expect that of themselves and their children.
And if I can just add too, in addition to that too, is I think that two things up there too that are very important about is our EPEC model and cognitive coaching. And I think what Mark just described is a way of growing our educators. So they are seeing it from more of a global perspective, and that whole UDL piece that they're seeing it as an integrated part of the classroom where all students have opportunities in that Tier 1 instruction. And we've done a lot of work around our multi-tiers, and that's really now focusing on Tier 1 as educators. That's where really we're diving down. What this data is telling me, to answer the question, Andy, on that too, is that it's telling me that we really have to get back to these core principles that we've outlined in here, and to be able to do this work, because it's telling us that the work we're doing, yes, we're making gains in math, and math is showing that gains, but really it's about other areas too, that we're not correlating the good work we've done there in other areas, and it has to relate to it.
Yeah, so I think that's really good. It's just the red flag to me, being a layman that's not living this every day, is it feels like it's not only just those fundamentals that you're talking about, but there's also something fundamental in the science that we're missing that the rest of the state's picked up on. And I know we're pushing more advanced capabilities around UDL and things like that, but for us to be that far off, that's just a red flag to me. So I think the challenge to the district is trying to crack that nut to figure out why is it so different, and then be able to take those capabilities and grow in the other areas, but sort of hit that breakthrough on the science part to see. Because everything I've heard has been positive. It surprised me to see that result. So.
Are there any other questions? I'm not hearing anything from Brandy at this point, so I'm going to assume that there isn't, unless I hear otherwise. And honestly, when I just say my assessment is that, again, this is one data point of a greater measurement. And I think when it comes to that your finger has been on the pulse of what the curriculum needs to evolve to be make effective students. When it comes to science, yes, it's the data point doesn't necessarily shine well, but when they get to the high school, and remember you're assessing up to 8th grade, and that's 1 to 2 years, maybe a year off for some of these kids, and they're winning science Olympiad, and they're winning robotics competitions. So I would say this is not a data point for panic. I think that's the one thing I always like to, whenever this presentation comes up, this is not a data point for panic. This is saying what are they looking for and what maybe did we not realize they were looking for, but it doesn't mean we're off course because, again, at the end of the K-12 experience, a lot of these kids are getting into the engineering and science fields and being very successful in getting to them. And that wouldn't happen if our science program isn't as good as it is. So again, I'm not panicking. I think it's just, again, assessment over assessment. It's different year over year, and it's really hard to get a good traction on what that means. Mark, I feel like you
I'm sorry,
absolutely
I
no.
didn't
Go
mean
ahead.
to-
No, I feel I'm sensing from the left. So no, honestly, that's what I had to say. So
I didn't mean to rush.
no, you're
I
fine.
just wanted-
Absolutely.
Just to build on that, it is, we've been saying for years that for instance, these are some of our best math numbers in a long time, but it's really the second year of a test that we don't have any history with. So we've said that when the numbers really look good, we don't crow and say, yay for us, any more that when the numbers, like let's say in another area, are not awesome, we hang our head. What we do is we double down. But I also want to echo something that Chair Barnes said, and that is that this is not the only assessment that we use to gauge student progress. We have multiple other assessments. In math and ELA, we have the STAR assessment. You never hear us talk about the STAR assessment. Those results are independent from these and get triangulated with these to see whether or not, in an individual student-by-student basis, whether or not, these kind of correlate and say, yep, there's a trend here because the STAR results are really consistent with the state results and are really consistent with the results from the assessments that come from the program that we adopted. And then we say, yep, same, that's triangulating. And then we say there really is a problem here. Or the converse would be, yep, this kid is shining and it's not an aberration because they're shining on this assessment and this assessment. So we do that all the time. The only thing that we ever talk about is the one state assessment, whether it's been NEAP, NECAP, Smarter Balance, or now SAS. That's the only one we talk about. But I wouldn't want to give the board or anybody in the community the feeling that that is the only assessment that we use. And I'm not discrediting this any more than I'm discrediting STAR. If, or any of the other assessments we use, the reason that you have multiple assessment points is to see whether or not you've got actionable data. So a lot of times when you get data, you've got consistency and then you've got an outlier here. And if you were to make your judgments on whether you remediate or not remediate based on an outlier, then you might be missing the other points. So you've got to really all kind of bring them together. So, we embrace the results, whether they're good or whether they're not great. So we don't put our head in the sand. I just would point out, again, that we don't use we only talk about one, but we have many. And when put together, those many often tell a slightly different story. So that would be all that I'd share.
Of course, Andy.
So my only comment to that is, and I understand, the problem is outside of this room and outside the school, the only thing people ever talk about and they use as a measure between places is these results. So I think we've all seen the results of the people saying, how do we compare against the other districts? And that's the only common measure. So
Right.
It's okay to acknowledge it, but we have to be able to but be able to provide some evidence to help show the growth. excuse me, because if I look at the science, I mean, to Chair Barnes's comment, I won a science award here when I went to school, like when we used abacuses a long time ago. But for me, the biggest issue was the chasm between the people that really knew and pushed themselves and the ones that didn't get it. You know, I'm using an extreme example, right? So there will always be, Merrimack has a really excellent record of robotics and Science Olympiad because we challenge the kids that get it and want to be challenged, absolutely. But the evidence, the concern I've got in the challenge is, are we missing a lot of kids that are just missing something fundamental that we should be able to carry along? So maybe we aren't as dramatic at the high end, but I hate to see such a emphasis at the low end. And if you have evidence as you go through the analysis that the other testing shows that that's not the case, I think that needs to be presented to the board so that we can help defend numbers like this to people. So I mean, that.
Agreed.
I'm trying not to be critical or anything, but I'm just saying we have to look at all the data, be able to express these things appropriately, right?
No, I agree, and thank you for that comment. I agree.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you. And we are on to item number 6, which is the overview of the proposed 2020-2021 school district budget with Mark.
Thank you. So, it is a humbling thing to sit before the board and the community and ask for an amount of money to educate our students, and I am very, very aware of what that means. I would just start by saying that you know, everybody at the leadership team and everybody in the administrative offices are also taxpayers, and so I both I experience it, and I'm in the the position of on the other hand asking for our taxpayers to reflect on the budget that we're presenting, and I'm very mindful of that. So that's just how I would start. But I will just read, if I could, my message tonight. So the 2020-2021 school district budget reflects the realities of an enrollment projected to increase by between 30 and 50 students annually through the next 5 years. It also reflects the school district's ongoing commitment to ensuring the construction of a solid foundation for all our students, but particularly for our youngest learners, upon which they can stand securely as they proceed through their school years to emerge well-prepared to be college and career ready. The Merrimack School Board has asked the school district administration to pay close attention to 3 interrelated areas in its construction of the 2020-2021 school district budget. The areas outlined by the school board are infrastructure management, student outcomes, and fiscal prudence. The summary of the district budget will likewise be presented in the context of these three broad categories. Infrastructure management. Of the 6 schools in the Merrimack School District, 5 are between 50 and 70 years old. These aging and well-used buildings, like all such facilities, require ongoing maintenance and, on occasion, require significantly more than typical upkeep to protect the assets that lie inside, the most important of which are the school-aged children of our town. Over the last 10 years, the taxpayer has seen fit to support the infrastructure of our schools by authorizing approximately $10 million for maintenance projects. This investment has paid for new and or partially new roofs on each of our school buildings, has provided newly paved and or expanded parking lots, new heating systems, fire alarm panels, updated electrical systems, water filtration systems, secure entrances, and safe and energy-efficient windows, to name just a few infrastructure projects that have been implemented not to beautify our facilities, but to enhance student safety and to optimize student learning. The maintenance component of the district's budget reflects those same goals, as does, of course, the school district capital improvement plan presented to the school board for its approval on November 18, 2019. However, since the budget is also a reflection of the priorities of those constructing it, this year's budget asks the school board to place the MES J. Muse roof, currently residing on the 2020-2026 capital improvement plan, on a warrant article, asking the town to consider the merits of this request in a separate vote from the district budget in order to prioritize another competing and more compelling current need. Student outcomes. The most important mission of a school system, beyond ensuring its students' safety, is to educate students to be successful in whatever ways they define success. For some, that means college. For others, that means a career in a trade directly out of high school. For others, that may mean military service. In each case, however, it is a specific mission of the public school system to ensure readiness for whatever next step a student wishes to take once she or he leaves the pre-K through 12 system. That readiness is predicated on a strong foundation. Early childhood education, specifically defined here as pre-K through grade 2, is the primary means of ensuring the development and maintenance of that foundation for all future success. Every effort to secure students' academic, social, and emotional foundation yields multiple benefits, with two interrelated benefits being of chief significance in the context of this budget: student outcomes and long-term cost savings. Put simply, investment in our earliest learners during a period of significant psychosocial transformations creates the conditions for future academic success. This is achieved chiefly by providing students access to contemporary curriculum matched with equally contemporary resources, well-trained teachers able to provide differentiated and responsive instruction, and class sizes and classroom supports that ensure the kind of significant and qualitatively different kinds of attention required by our youngest learners. These are not luxuries for our students. Research and our own experience suggests that these investments are necessary to achieve the outcomes that our students deserve and that this board has asked administration to pursue. Further, such investments yield significant long-term financial savings. For example, personnel costs and resources associated with the necessary remediation of academic and social-emotional delays in older students could be redeployed or saved in the context of an even stronger early childhood experience for our youngest students. Over the last 10 years, the district's student population has indeed declined. In the last decade, the population has declined by as much as 13%. That much has been quite public. What has been significantly less well known is the associated reduction in force of our professional staff during that time. During that same 10-year period, the district reduced its staff by 30 full-time positions, or approximately 8% from its high point. This reduction has been made slowly, proportionally, over the period of student population decline, constrained by state minimum standards for class size, which articulate both required and suggested maximum student-teacher ratios. Information about class size and student-teacher ratios was shared publicly at a school board meeting on October 21st, 2019. At that same meeting, administration shared information that, according to demographers at NESDEC that the district has relied upon for over 20 years, enrollment is projected to increase, as I said earlier, in Merrimack by between 30 and 50 students annually over at least the next 5 years. This should make sense to residents who have seen significant residential construction projects appear throughout the community over the last years. Additionally, and far less well known to the public, are the number of families who reside in long-term accommodations at Merrimack hotels, particularly impacting Thorntons Ferry School. In the spirit of the mission of public education, we welcome all these families and their children and will do whatever we can to create the conditions for their success. The increased enrollment, projected now at 52 more students next year than this year, coupled with our growing understanding of the requirements of a strong foundation for our earliest learners, leads administration to include the addition of 4 full-time teaching positions in this year's budget. These positions are to be deployed as follows: Thorntons Ferry School, 1 kindergarten teacher and 1 first-grade teacher; Mastrocola Elementary School, 1 first-grade teacher; Reeds Ferry Elementary School, 1 first-grade teacher. In addition, included in this budget is a request for 3 full-time kindergarten instructional assistants. These will be deployed in each of our 3 lower elementary schools. These positions chiefly represent the academic student outcomes objectives of this budget, reflecting both a trend towards increased enrollment and a prioritization of a more personalized, student-centered educational experience for our youngest learners. Further, this budget is impacted chiefly by the addition of 1 full-time system of care coordinator, which reflects another reality felt every day by educators in our classrooms, but not perhaps sufficiently understood outside of the school environment. To be specific, students are experiencing significant mental health and behavioral challenges at increasingly younger ages, and we must proactively deal with this new reality in order to create the conditions for their long-term success. The primary function of this new role is to facilitate a comprehensive planning and support process focused almost exclusively on students' social and emotional needs as a necessary component of their future success. This position will serve all the schools under the direction of the Director of Student Services and in partnership with the school district leadership team. The costs associated with these positions roughly equals the dollar amount over default represented by this proposed budget. The cost associated with the proposed personnel increases is $406,744. The amount that this budget is over default is $403,329. Fiscal prudence. The construction of this budget, as in all previous budgets, is impacted by the same realities that affect all budgets: rising costs. This year's budget stands at $81,117,846. The 2019-2020 budget, approved by the voters last April, was $79,034,477. The difference between last year's approved budget and this year's proposed budget is $2,083,369. That difference is almost entirely comprised of non-discretionary obligations, and I'll list them. There's an 8.5% increase in health costs, a 3.9% increase in dental costs, a 3.25% increase in professional staff contracted salaries, proportional increases in FICA and New Hampshire retirement due to wage increase, 3% increase in support staff contracted salaries, 5.5% increase in utilities, 3.5% increase in transportation costs. These increases, all non-discretionary, without adding 1 cent of discretionary items, amounts to an automatic increase of approximately $2 million over last year's approved budget. In addition, many years see impacts to the district operating budget brought about by decisions and/or mandates that come with no associated financial supports. This year's revenues, for example, are impacted by an approximately $300,000 decrease in Medicaid reimbursements brought about by decisions made at the state level. This shortfall must be made up through increased taxation at the local level. This information was shared with the school board at its September 16, 2019 meeting. The total non-discretionary increases are then modified by the reduction of debt service interest in the amount of $53,038 and the conclusion of our heating and lighting retrofit project in the amount of $467,482. Excluding the personnel request outlined above, a site development study and funds to demolish and remove the current Brentwood building, the district budget as presented in all its categories is below default and virtually level funded. In just over 4 years, the Merrimack School District will be debt-free. Given the significant capital and program investments made in the district over the last 20 years, this is a singular achievement made possible by the partnership between past and current school boards and administrations. This budget reflects a continued march toward debt freedom and will allow us to contemplate future growth in capital and other projects while maintaining a long-held school board goal of stabilizing the tax rate through predictable and steady budgeting. This budget reflects a solemn responsibility to the taxpayer who, in states like New Hampshire, bears all the costs associated with educating its community's children. This responsibility is matched, however, with another equally important responsibility to provide the conditions for optimal student outcomes in the context of ever-rising fixed costs. The process that follows next will seek to determine, through extensive dialogue by multiple town entities and the participation of citizens, the best balance between these two imperatives for all the school district's constituents. So in summary, the 2020-2021 proposed administrative budget is $81,117,846. 2019-2020 approved operating budget is $79,034,477. The proposed administrative budget is 2.64% more than the 2019-2020 approved operating budget, approximately 98% of which is due to non-discretionary obligations. The 2020-2021 default budget as required under RSA 40:13 is $80,714,517. The proposed administrative budget is $403,329, or 0.5% more than the default budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Obviously, we're going to be digging into the numbers over the next few weeks. It's definitely where a lot of our dialogue will come. This is the delivery of our budget, and with that, we invite, participation. I think that's something that was even brought up in our board message. Is, it's been a number of years where we deliver a budget to an empty room, and that definitely doesn't feel that we, and that unfortunately our deliberative session has become the new budget hearing, and that's not the time or the place. When we're in the numbers, that is the time and the place to really get the best and most constructive feedback. So with that, I think we have a couple of months of a budget cycle. The budget committee has not met yet either because of the same snowstorm that kept us from our meeting on Monday. So I think with that, there are a lot of touch points that the community has to be able to participate either in person, by email, or by phone. So with that, Andy, I feel like you're about to raise your hand. So
Yeah, just logistic, excuse me, question. So when will the budget be put online on the website?
As the superintendent was delivering his message, concurrently with the message, Mark Merrifield was busy at his home posting this budget online. So it is online now.
So somebody at home is seeing it before we actually do. Just kidding.
Your books are over here.
Well, I can't read it from here, but no.
Yes,
okay.
they are, yes.
Great.
well, last year I passed them out, so he hid them where I couldn't get to them first, I guess. Okay.
And just so people know, the budget committee meets a week from yesterday, the 10th, I believe. So,
Okay.
and they'll be getting the presentation and be seeing this as well. So,
Well, the meeting on the 11th is just to go over the year-end review.
it's the 10th, by the way, not the 11th.
The 10th, yeah.
Just,
What-
but you won't be giving the summary to them as well. But they'll be able to
No.
get their budget.
They'll be
budget
able to
books.
get their budget
Okay.
books
Okay.
at that point in time. And I may, because it's kind of my one-man show to go over everything on the prior year, I may hit a little bit of high points here or there, but it's not going to be the formal, budget message. So they'll be able to learn about last year, and then, they'll know about this coming budget, seeing it's already public information, so.
Okay. So with that, Brandy, your book will be at the superintendent's office when you are up to getting it. And the two other board members will get the same information, who are excused tonight. And Johanna, we can have it delivered to the high school. With that, we'll go on to item number 7, which is the NHSBA Delegate Assembly. Cinda Guagliumi was to hold this part of the meeting because I'm not only on the board, I'm on the executive board of the NHSBA, so I recuse myself from discussions on that. Tonight was supposed to be going over basically the protocol with Naomi on, voting, what happens when motions have amendments and changes the intent of what the original motion was. Some of that did happen last year. It was quite an engaging event. And on top of that, the board and the executive board voted on all of the resolutions that were presented. And because I am a voting member, it would be inappropriate for me to also deliberate here and sway the discussion. So with Cinda being excused from tonight's meeting and me being in a position of influence to that discussion, we will table it to the next meeting. On to item number 8, which is the approval of November 18th non-public minutes. I will move to accept. Andy, will you second? So, Andy, how do you vote?
In favor?
Brandy?
In favor.
And I vote in favor. The motion carries 3-0-0. Item number 9 is other. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Seeing none, are there any comments from the board? Seeing none from the board, and Mark, comments?
So perhaps I should have done this as part of the message, but maybe not. Just the school board budget hearings, the proposed dates.
Okay.
Can I just,
That'd be a good time, yep.
so tentatively scheduled for Monday, December 16th at a regularly scheduled board meeting. It would be planned to be technology, library, media, maintenance, and food service. Then Monday, January 6th, which is another scheduled, regularly scheduled board meeting, would be MES, Reed's Ferry, Thornton's Ferry, and J Muse. And then this is the one that I think there was a question that some board members might have conflict, but Wednesday, January 8th would be the high school, the middle school, student services, and the district budget. Then Tuesday, January 21st would be additional meetings if necessary, warrant article discussion, and then a snow date to be determined in January. So the final approval of the budget, I believe, would occur either on Wednesday, January 8th, or at the board meeting on Tuesday, January 21st. And it's Tuesday because Monday is Martin Luther King Day.
Okay, I believe there were conflicts on
Wednesday,
Wednesday, the 8th.
Right, so we'll,
So
Confer.
we'll confer. So I think if you hadn't gotten feedback on alternate dates, we can try to look at, it would probably be more appropriate, and that would be 2 nights in a row, but to do it that Tuesday, the 7th, because I believe Thursdays would be when the town council would be meeting.
okay,
And my other educated guess, but it's no guarantee, is that we would probably need to be in the memorial room, because I believe Tuesdays might be planning or zoning.
okay.
So if I'm getting my dates right. Yeah, so
Okay.
with that, we'll try to get, when we get that solidified, we can also put that on the website. So what we'll do is we'll poll the board to see if Tuesday, the 8th works.
Very good.
Or Tuesday, the 7th, I'm sorry, Tuesday, the
Tuesday,
7th of January will work for that next meeting date.
Okay.
So the one thing I haven't gotten from you, so we definitely need to get you questions in advance. So knowing that our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, we would want questions for technology, maintenance, and food service to be to you by the 9th, which is a week from today.
Be very helpful.
Or, I'm sorry, oh my gosh, it's 5 days. I'm looking at today like it, and I'm not working 5 more days. So,
It could be a week from today.
yeah,
That would give us
it'd be a
enough
week
time.
from our original. So if we can make it the 11th, then a week from today, that would be ideal.
Mhm.
And then for the January meetings, and bear with me, because if we can get questions to you, I think we're gonna need them to you by the 30th. And that would, I mean, it's gonna be during winter break.
That would be,
So would that be okay?
yes.
Okay, so the 30th for the rest of the budget, knowing that the rest of the departments will be the 6th and the 7th.
Okay,
Does that make sense? Okay,
thank you.
thank you. So 11th, 12, 11, 19, and then 12:30. Or 2 deadlines. So I'll put that out to the other 2 board members and our student representatives so they're aware. Okay, so with that, if there are no other comments, we'll go on to item number 10, which is new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, committee reports, are there any committee reports? I have 3. The Greater Woods Subcommittee met on the 18th. We talked about trail maintenance and cleanup plans because some of them are getting, either trails are becoming kind of foot patterned in where they're going off the map. So like repurposing the trails back to the original intent, so we don't get people getting lost, because that's happened a little bit. The 2020 meeting schedule is established, and we will be doing at least 2 meetings in 2020 at the outdoor classroom. So that's a great opportunity for the community to kind of understand the property, have a meeting first, and then go and do an activity on the property so that people can get the full understanding of its benefits. And I think we'll be doing one in the spring, one in the fall, but where there's enough daylight so we can get it all accomplished. Parks and Rec met on the 19th. So the winter holiday parade is the 8th, which is Sunday at 1 o'clock. And it will be followed by the tree lighting. and there will be music and refreshments there as well. And the budget was reviewed, and of course, there are some impacts to the district. They will definitely be doing some basic maintenance to the skate park, but they do not plan on doing any maintenance to the basketball court at the end of O'Gara. So that's something that we may want to consider if student safety is concerned, a concern for that. And then they were reviewing the Halloween event and its attendance, and there were over 1,000 people at Wasserman Park, and it's becoming kind of an unmanageable amount of parking and people for that space. So they're talking about short-term and long-term, what should we be doing to have community events that are getting that large of a participation. Easter egg hunt, Halloween party, obviously they do winter carnivals, but they're getting more participation from the community, and we're seeing it with our schools, obviously, more young kids moving in and participating. What can we do to, what are the options for the community to have a better layout? And of course, the school did come up as an option, so we may get pulled in for what we can bring to the table at some point, but we're not there yet. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And then also on the 19th was the New Hampshire School Boards Association board meeting. So I took it from the phone and walked into the meeting as soon as I hung up to Parks and Rec. But we did vote on the what we'll be doing at the Delegate Assembly, the resolutions. And there are definitely those that will have a lot of impact in Concord, because that's the platform on which the NHSBA works off of, is what we vote on. So, for Rosemary, just a little, there's more to come on that. So that's what I had. Are there any other committee reports? Seeing none, we will go on to item number 12, which is public comments on agenda items. Anyone that would like to speak, please state your name and address for the record.
Rosemary Rung, 21 Ministerial Drive. Is this
Yep.
on? Okay.
You bet.
I forgot to mention something when I gave my legislative update, but I participated in a Rutgers University program about building leadership and engagement with students in the political process. So I had, they had sent me a book, and I think they sent all female legislators a book called Somebody Goes to Washington, Gracie Goes to Washington. So I had contacted Reed's Ferry School and asked if they wanted me to come in and read the book to them. There was sort of an outline protocol for legislators to visit classrooms. So I went last week and read the book to all the fourth graders, took questions from them. Very insightful questions. A lot of it was follow-up to their visit at the State House. So it was a really enjoyable experience. I was very impressed. It was strange being back there, because my youngest, who went through Reed's Ferry, well, all my kids went through the Reed's Ferry, but the youngest is now 24, so it's been a while. A couple things. I'm putting on my resident hat. I am very disturbed about the science assessments. And I'd like to suggest to the board is maybe do some benchmarking. You know, look at those districts who scored very high and see what they're doing that we're not. I also wonder if there are things that are beyond the curriculum that are affecting those results, things that are going on just in the culture of the school that may inhibit students from doing their best on the assessment. And I think, you know, when we talk about the budget, I think that's another area where it would really help people in the community to look at benchmarking, like how do our health costs compare per employee to other districts? Put it into, you know, put that $81 million into perspective so that we can easily see how we are comparing to other districts. I know Londonderry has always been a district, 15 years ago, where we benchmarked, but I don't know what those districts would be today. You know, they would be districts that would be within our labor market in southern New Hampshire. We might include Atkinson. You know, where would people travel to come and work at Merrimack? Those districts have about the same demographics, socioeconomic levels that we do, and really see, are we doing better than them or not? So that's my suggestion. And the other thing is, I am looking at the budget right now, so thank you, Mark Merrifield. But I see that in the revenues for the new budget don't seem to include the $750,000 plus that the state, the legislature passed this year. I know the district got that extra education grant money, but because it came in during an already approved budget cycle, that got turned over to the town. But there is a second year of that that's going to be coming that I don't see reflected in the budget.
You're seeing more than I am, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I would
Well-
prefer you not answer that question because that's the very question I had and I want it to be part of our budget discussion.
Okay, you can save it, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
we
no.
worked really
Right.
hard to get that money back to Merrimack. So I don't know why it's not included in the revenue estimate.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
go,
you.
I mean, go ahead if,
Well, a statement like that kind of makes me look like a bit of a fool. What we got last year was $8.1 million. What we got this year is $8.8 million. There's your $700,000. What we're supposed to get next year for the 2021 budget is $8.8 million. So it's there. It's there twice.
Okay, because.
We're not supposed to get $9.5 million. We got $8.1 million last year. This year, we're getting 8.8. There's your 700. Next year is the same as this year, and that's reflected in the budget and revenue. It's there.
We can take it offline if you want, but that's 700 and,
Well, we
I think it was
sure
like
can,
706. It was in additional money. That didn't come through until October.
Yeah, I know, and it was recorded
Oh, so
when
it
we
is
set
recorded
the
in.
tax rate for this year. All that money, the 8.8 million from the 8.1 to 8.8, was taken into account when the tax rate was set, and so it's not additional money. It was included in the revenue estimates that were put forward and approved by Department of Revenue Administration.
When was that?
When was that? End of October.
Okay, all right, because I'm just looking at the 2019-2020 approved budget, and the,
The revenue is there is $8.8 million for the
right,
for the state aid.
Okay.
Went up 700 grand.
right, okay.
What's it going to be in 2020, 2021? My assumption it's going to be $8.8 million.
Yeah, well, it's based on number of students who are, the enrollment
is
and number of
true.
free and reduced, so it's going to vary by,
It
what the
could
student
vary.
population is.
Right.
Okay, now I was just wondering, because my understanding is that when that money came in, it couldn't be part of the budget, since the budget was already approved, that's why it got turned over to the town. And I think, Shannon, you had brought that up at a meeting.
it's brought to the bottom line. So it didn't go to the town, it went to us, but it
It
went to the
goes to
bottom line.
reduce the school
Right.
portion of the tax rate.
Right,
And
so,
seeing it was already known to us when the tax rate was set, that's what happened. So instead of us setting the tax rate early in August, which would have been ridiculous because nobody has their audit done by then, in August, it would have said 8.1, and then we would have set the tax rate, and we would have got extra money. But by the time that 8.8, the extra $700,000 was known, that's when we were setting the tax rate. And it's foolish not to include it to reduce taxes because that was the purpose of the money anyway.
Okay, I get it. I mean, I have to kind of look at it at paper. That's the type of learner I am. But it went to reduce
The school
the school
portion of the
portion
tax
of the
rate.
rate for the bills that just came in because it couldn't have been spent because
Absolutely.
Correct.
it was, okay. So it didn't have to go to the town I'm just looking at the
no, not the town,
mechanics.
just,
No.
I think at one point there was an understanding that we could spend it, and that, we wanted that, just, first of all, like, a check was presented to us by the governor, and really all it was there to do was, I called it legally laundering the money. It went straight through our accounts back to the taxpayer. but it's not something that we would have been able to use for anything like infrastructure, or we couldn't use it at all. That's all that could be done with that money because of how and when it was distributed. So although there was a big cardboard check, all it was a pass through to the taxpayer,
It was
which is fine.
It was a big cardboard check.
Right, but the
And
thing is,
in-
there was
Well,
never.
you actually got
right.
electronic funds transfer.
Yeah, we
Right.
have an
Yeah.
ETF, right?
We do. We didn't have to actually
But
bring
in
that to our
talk- In
bank.
talking with Department of Revenue Administration, if the tax rate wasn't set and if you had not estimated properly of the exact amount of money you were going to get, you could have spent the money. Now, the process for that would be to hold a budget hearing, have a hearing with the Budget Committee, have another deliberative session, have another ballot vote, go through the whole process.
But-
It wasn't just, here's the money, let's spend it. You can't spend revenue without an appropriation. And this wasn't classified as unanticipated revenue. So we couldn't go that route. And plus, it was already incorporated when when the tax rate was being calculated. So it went right to reduce the school portion of the tax rate.
Okay, because I was just confused because when I saw 2019, 2020 approved budget and that number was included, I just saw that approved budget is what the voters passed
No.
in April.
It is.
It is, but the
But you
8.8
wouldn't have
million's in
known
there.
that money, what you were getting in
But the
October.
revenue's totally separate.
Yeah, okay.
Because
but-
if you looked at the budget, revenue, and expenditure summary form that was presented to the voters back when we were talking at that budget, that $8.8 million in state aid that you see there would have said $8.1 million.
Okay, I see. So when you're saying 2019, 2020 approved budget,
It's
that's
just the budget.
it's
the
just
The
Operating.
revenues change right up until the
Okay.
time that you're setting the tax rate.
okay. I have to just go through and look at it. This isn't always in my
Come see me.
wheelhouse.
Oh, absolutely.
This kind of
All right,
budget.
we're an open door. So
Oh, great. Thank you.
You bet. So, let's see. Public comments. No other public comments. We'll take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn by Andy. I will second. Brandy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Andy,
In favor?
and I vote in favor. Thank you and good night. Feel better, Brandy.
Thank you.
And getting stuck, it's between you and the other person and the police essentially at that point in time. And it's up to you. If your car gets stuck, you pay to have somebody tow it out. It is what it is, essentially.